I was only a year old when she handed me over to a stranger, and I never saw her again. $500. That was the value of my life to the woman who gave birth to me. Growing up, I used to wonder what kind of mother could do that. What kind of pain or desperation could make someone sell their own child. But after years of silence, that same woman showed up at my door. Older, fragile, and begging for something I never expected. I looked into her eyes, felt my past collide with my present. The same hands that once let me go were now trembling, reaching out for help. She didn't recognize the man I had become, the business owner, the one everyone sees as successful. But inside me, the abandoned child was wide awake again. And at that moment, I had to decide, do I give her the help she's asking for? Or walk away, just like she once did to me? I was born in a small, forgotten town called Maple Creek, Missouri, the kind of place where rusted mailboxes outnumbered jobs, and everyone knew who was struggling. My mother's name was Caroline, and she was only 19 when she had me. My father had disappeared before I could even take my first steps, leaving her alone in a trailer with bills piling higher than her hope. I can't do this anymore. I remember overhearing her whisper once, her voice cracking as she stared at an empty baby bottle on the counter. The neighbors still talk about that night. A thunderstorm rolled over Maple Creek, shaking the windows of our small trailer. Caroline was sitting on the couch, holding me close, when a man knocked on the door, Mr. Harris, a local mechanic who'd been trying for years to have a child with his wife. "You'll take good care of him?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Better than anyone ever could," he said, sliding an envelope across the table. It had $500 inside. She signed a paper she didn't even read, kissed my forehead, and let the rain drown out her sobs as they carried me away. Growing up, I didn't know any of this. Mr. and Mrs. Harris raised me as their own, and I called them Mom and Dad. We lived in a modest house on Pine Street, just behind the old gas station. Life wasn't easy, but it was honest. Still, there were nights when I'd wake up crying, haunted by dreams I couldn't explain, a woman's face in tears, a baby crying in the dark, and the sound of rain hitting metal. Mrs. Harris would come into my room, hold my hand, and whisper, "You're safe now, Ethan. Go back to sleep. Everything changed when I turned 14. I was helping Mr. Harris clean out the garage when I found a faded envelope in a toolbox, my original birth certificate. My last name wasn't Harris. It was Walker. I confronted them, shaking, demanding the truth. "We wanted to tell you when you were older," Mrs. Harris said, eyes filled with guilt. "Your mother, she didn't give you away. She sold you, Ethan. She thought it was the only way to save you." My knees gave out. "She sold me?" I whispered, the words cutting through my chest like glass. "For how much?" Mr. Harris hesitated before answering. $500. That night, I ran through the streets of Maple Creek until my legs gave out. The rain poured just like it did the night she gave me away, cold, relentless, unforgiving. I remember shouting into the storm, "Why wasn't I enough?" But no one answered. That was the night I made a promise to myself. I would never be defined by that number again. One day, I'd come back to this town not as the boy who was sold, but as the man who proved he was priceless. Leaving Maple Creek was the hardest and best decision I ever made. I packed a single duffel bag at 17, hugged Mr. and Mrs. Harris for the last time, and took a bus to Kansas City, chasing a future that didn't exist yet. The city was louder, faster, and crueler than anything I'd known. My first job was at a diner on 9th Street, 12-hour shifts washing dishes for $6 an hour. But every night, I'd look out the window and tell myself, "This isn't where my story ends." Those words became my prayer, my motivation, my armor. I spent every spare minute learning. I'd sneak into the public library after my shifts, devouring books on business, finance, and marketing. One night, a regular customer, a man in a gray suit named Mr. Donnelly, noticed the pile of books beside my mop bucket. "You planning to start a company or clean one?" he joked. I smiled. "Both, sir." He laughed, but 2 weeks later, he handed me a business card. That simple gesture became the spark that changed everything. Mr. Donnelly ran a small logistics company, and he offered me a part-time assistant job. It wasn't glamorous, but it taught me everything about discipline and resilience. I showed up early, left late, and asked questions nobody else dared to. "You've got fire in you, kid," Donnelly used to say. "Don't let life turn it into smoke." Over the next few years, I saved every cent, learned how deals were made, and studied the patterns of success like it was survival because, for me, it was. By 25, I opened my first company, Walker Freight Solutions, built from a rented office and a second-hand laptop. I made mistakes, hundreds of them, but I refused to quit. I slept on the floor of that office for months, eating instant noodles and dreaming of something bigger. Slowly, contracts started coming in. One truck turned into three into 10. And within 5 years, we were shipping across the entire Midwest. The boy who once had nothing was now negotiating 6-figure deals. But even in the middle of that success, a quiet voice in my head whispered, would she be proud of me or ashamed? The truth is, no amount of money erased the emptiness inside. I'd built an empire out of pain, but I'd never faced its source. I remember sitting alone in my office one night, surrounded by glass walls and city lights, staring at my reflection. The kid from Maple Creek was gone, replaced by a man people respected, even envied. But I couldn't escape the question that had followed me all my life. If I could buy back my past, would I? That's when the phone rang and fate brought the answer to me. It was a Tuesday night, one of those quiet, lonely evenings when success feels heavier than failure. I was reviewing a contract when my assistant knocked softly on the door. "Sir, there's a woman here asking for you. Says her name is Caroline." I froze. That name hadn't crossed my mind in years, at least not out loud. My chest tightened as I whispered, "Caroline Walker?" She nodded. "Yes, sir." "She says she's your mother." My world stopped. For a moment, the air in the room felt too thick to breathe. When she walked in, time slowed. Her hair was grayer, her hands thinner, and her eyes, the same eyes I'd seen in my nightmares, were filled with exhaustion and regret. "Ethan," she said softly, almost afraid of the sound of my name. I stood up, unable to move or speak. "You've grown?" She tried to smile, but her voice cracked. "I didn't think you'd ever want to see me." I clenched my fists. "You're right," I said, my voice trembling. I didn't. She began to explain everything, how life in Maple Creek had crushed her, how poverty had taken everything, how she'd never forgiven herself for that night. "I thought they'd give you a better life," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. But I was wrong. I was just weak. I turned away, staring at the city lights through the window. "You didn't sell me to save me," I said coldly. "You sold me to survive." Her silence confirmed it. She wasn't here for forgiveness. She was here because she had nowhere else to go. Finally, she said what she came to say. "I'm sick, Ethan. I've got heart failure and I can't afford treatment." She looked down, ashamed. "I didn't come for your money. I came because I didn't know where else to turn. I just needed to see you before it's too late." My jaw tightened as years of anger and compassion collided inside me. The part of me that wanted revenge whispered, "Walk away." But the boy in me, the one who still remembered her lullaby, couldn't. I looked at her, really looked at her, not as the woman who sold me, but as the broken soul who'd been trying to survive her own story. "You hurt me more than anyone ever could," I said quietly. "But if I let you die out there alone, I'd become just as cold as the world that made you do it." She started to cry uncontrollably, whispering, "I don't deserve this." I sighed, finally letting my guard fall. maybe not. But I need to know that the person who brought me into this world gets a second chance to leave it with peace. The following days felt like walking through someone else's dream. I moved Caroline into a quiet apartment near the hospital in Kansas City. I paid for her treatment, but I didn't tell anyone who she really was. To the nurses, she was just Miss Walker, a patient sponsored by a local businessman. But every time I visited, she'd look at me with the same guilt in her eyes, as if she couldn't believe I was really there. One afternoon, she reached for my hand and whispered, "Ethan, you don't owe me this kindness." I looked at her and said, "You're right, I don't. But I owe it to the man I became because of what you did." As the weeks passed, the anger I'd carried for years started to lose its edge. We talked about everything: the nights she cried after giving me away, the birthdays she spent alone, the endless guilt she carried. There were moments when I saw the girl she used to be, young, scared, and completely lost. "If I could go back," she said one evening, "I'd rather die poor than lose you again." For the first time in my life, I believed her. It didn't erase the pain, but it softened it, turning rage into something quieter, something that felt a lot like forgiveness. One morning, I walked into her hospital room and found her staring out the window, smiling faintly at the sunrise. "You look peaceful," I said. She nodded. "I am, because for the first time, I know you're okay." She reached out, her hand trembling, and placed something in my palm, a small silver locket with my baby picture inside. "I kept this," she whispered, "all these years. I couldn't let it go. I couldn't hold back the tears anymore." For the first time, I hugged her, really hugged her, not as the woman who sold me, but as the mother who finally came home. A few weeks later, Caroline passed away quietly in her sleep. I buried her back in Maple Creek, beside my adoptive parents, because in a strange way, all three of them had built who I became. As I stood by her grave, the wind carried the same scent of rain from that night long ago. But this time, I didn't feel anger. I felt peace. "You gave me life twice," I said softly. "Once by birth and once by teaching me how to forgive." Today, when people ask about my success, I never talk about numbers or achievements. I tell them this story, because the truth is, we all come from something broken. Some of us just learn to build with the pieces. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It transforms it. And sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't success or power, it's choosing to love when life gave you every reason not to. Before we end, if this story touched your heart, you need to watch the one I shared before about a little girl who grew up without love, rejected by her own parents, yet rose from the pain and became a woman filled with kindness and success. Her story proves that even the deepest scars can turn into the purest strength. So when this video ends, don't go anywhere. Click the one on your screen and keep believing that love can heal what life once broke. Thanks for watching and subscribe for more real, heartwarming stories.